Let's do it. Maybe we should close the door, though. That's all right. That happens. Delighted whenever she comes. All right. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. All right. Coffee is kicking in. This will mark the end of our Lenten Catechesis series, Seeking God, the Wisdom, and the Role of Saint Benedict. The series has been following Esther de Waal's book, Seeking God, the Way of Saint Benedict, which takes the rule written for Benedictine monks in the 6th century AD and seeks to find a way by which laity today can enter into some of these Benedictine practices deeply and reverently. We have had lectures on listening to God in prayer, obedience, acting upon what we hear in prayer and the word, stability in our inner lives and in Christian community, and conversion, commitment to change, which we heard last week. Now we come to our final class, Benedictine Balance in Simplicity, which, if you are reading the book, is drawn from chapters 6 and 7. Balance seems like a good note to end on, but really we have been talking about balance throughout this entire series. Let us consider our last few weeks together. Prayer and obedience, which we heard about in weeks 1 and 2 from Jim Leonard and Deacon Mary. Chapter 7 of the Rule of Saint Benedict begins, "Brethren, the sacred scriptures cry out to us and say, everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and everyone who humbles himself will be exalted. In humility, we will be exalted." Many consider Maria Callas one of the world's greatest sopranos. She was nicknamed La Divina, the divine. In one session, the diva called out an unfortunate student who had abused a note in a grossly dramatic fashion. "But madame," exclaimed the student, "it's a cry of despair." "No, it isn't," said Callas. "It's a B flat." In chapter 20 of his rule, Saint Benedict writes that prayer should be brief, unless prolonged by the infusion of divine grace. It should be simple and from the heart. Obedience is surrendering to what something is, not what we would make it into, which usually means making it into something about ourselves. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. This kind of humility, to learn to sing or pray, which we might think of as the song of the heart, may require obedience to an authority who is not ourselves, who will help guide us. This obedience to authority and to a form can lead to a balance of our own individual prayer lives and the prayer life of the community. More on that in a moment. Stability and conversion, which we heard about in weeks 3 and 4 from Bob Roberts and Melody Schwarting. In writing about stability, Esther de Waal emphasizes that the Benedictine way does not involve some soul-searching, self-indulgent introspection. Such an approach leads to us saying things like, "It's a cry of despair," rather than to see the work that God has given us to do, which is to hit an unwavering B flat. Stability means acceptance, not fighting to put our own personal mark on everything, like a dog marking his territory, which are my words, not de Waal's, and definitely not St. Benedict's. For those seeking to convert to a life of stability, here again is a balance for us. As Melody told us, the conversatio morum is a commitment to a life of change. Our God loves to work in paradoxes. We just heard that humility leads to being exalted. Now stability requires commitment to change. We think of stable substances as not changing, but even in remaining perfectly still in prayer, we are invited into constant movement, which is the dance of the Trinity. As Malcolm Guite describes it, we seek out Jesus, and he says, I must bring you to my Father. And then the Father says, you must go and listen to my beloved Son. And then the Son says, I am the way to the Father. And in the Father's love for the Son, he sends us back to Jesus. And so around and around we go, just like the constant movement between humility and exaltation. And so we have the Father to the Son and the Son to the Father. And who is the one facilitating this constant back and forth, back and forth? It is the Holy Spirit. It is the joy and the delight and the love in the other that drives this constant movement. And it is in this that we find stability. And in stability, we find balance. Some of you may know that I trained in dance for many years. I had terrible balance. I had terrible everything, but particularly balance. And the reason I had terrible balance was, at its core, I didn't understand what balance was. I thought you just hold on with everything you've got, hold your breath, and will the balance to happen. I hadn't yet learned from a master. Balance is constant movement. The second you stop moving, you fall. You're pushing down on your supporting leg, you're widening your back, you're engaging your core, you're extending your arm in one direction, even as you're extending your arm in the other direction, in the complete opposite way. You're lifting up through the top of your head, even as you're keeping your chin down and your neck long, and all of these things work in perfect unity. And when that happens, your body sings. Love is this constant movement. It pulls us out of that place of a stationary self-indulgence. We can rest in ourselves because we are resting in that constant movement of the love of the Trinity. So balance is our golden thread in this Benedictine series. So let's continue to see where it leads us. For Saint Benedict, his image for balance was a ladder of humility based on Jacob's ladder. Each rung balances the earthly realm on one side and the heavenly realm on the other. The one who climbs must have a Trinitarian balance between body, mind, and soul. De Waal emphasizes that an understanding, the mind, of the inseparable link between the body and the soul would have been much more commonplace in earlier societies. Asking God to bless me would be to pray for his blessing on all three. Having all three in balance is required to climb the ladder. However, you have to climb the ladder in order to achieve the balance. Paradox again. So you can't climb the ladder without balance of body, mind, and soul, and you can't hope to achieve a balance of body, mind, and soul without climbing the ladder. So what do? You have a guide, a spiritual director, someone who has navigated this ladder and can help you discern where to put your feet when you can't rely on your own sense of balance. I told you I would get back to obedience to authority. Now, obedience to authority can be difficult in any context, and maybe in particular in an American context, where we fought a revolution that basically could be summed up as, you can't tell me what to do. But it's not impossible. Last week, Melody mentioned apprenticeships, that desire I want to learn. You know, I don't know. Humility. Teach me. So an outer guide can help you find your way. Think Virgil, and then Beatrice for Dante. And like Virgil leading Dante, and like the angels on Jacob's ladder, you have to go down in order to go up. In the Divine Comedy, Satan fell through the earth and pushed out a crater on the other side. So at some point, continuing down through the earth is when you reorient yourself, you find that you're actually climbing up on the other side. The further you go down, the further you go up. Those who humble themselves will be exalted. Spiritual direction can come from many different sources. For me, becoming an associate or an oblate with the community of St. Mary, an Anglican Benedictine community of nuns, provided the way for me to climb the ladder alone in community. This is taken from the Community of St. Mary's website. A sister will help form your rule of life, and we ask that you take 6 months to try it out before being received. We'll give you an outline that suggests how you may organize your time commitments and frequency of participation in the Eucharist and Divine Office, a rule of private prayer, abstinence and fasting, and charity and witness. Each Eastern Province associate has a relationship with a particular sister who keeps in touch on a regular basis. De Waal says there are 3 disciplines or exercises which the monastic life uses, which stems from that triple division into body, mind, and spirit, upon which the Benedictine understanding is based. For the body, a lifestyle that commends stability, work with the hands, poverty and good works, observances which lead to joyful service in the workshops where we are able to toil faithfully at all tasks. For the soul, the practice of humility, purity of heart through the practice of obedience, good zeal, interior silence, and through practice, the transformation of the work that once the monk performed with great effort and perhaps initially fear of damnation, has been transformed to habit without effort and done in the delight of virtue. No longer a descent through hell, but having climbed over the devil, is climbing now up to heaven. For the mind, study and continual hearing of the Bible, that's our daily office, and pure and continual prayer. I have been an associate for about 10 years. The deeper I have gone on this journey, the more I have been elevated. In discipline, I have found freedom, not dissimilar from my 10 years of dance training. When I started training, I was completely turned in, inflexible, and a klutz. After years of sometimes grueling training, I was still a klutz, but I was much more turned out, and I had a much greater command over my body. As an associate with a spiritual director, I now can move more easily because of the strengthening and integration of not only my body, but of my mind and soul as well. This leads me to a brief word about grace, something that is often attributed to a trained dancer. She moves with such grace, but has a special meaning for Christians. De Waal summarizes the end of St. Benedictine's 7th chapter on the ladder of humility thus. St. Benedict says that by the time the monk has finished the arduous climb and the emptying out process of humility, which is what it is describing, is completed, that will be apparent to everyone simply by the stance of the whole body. A monk always manifests humility in his bearing, no less than in his heart, that it is evident at the work of God in the oratory, the monastery, or the garden, on a journey or in a field, or anywhere else. Whether he sits, walks, or stands, his bearing will reflect his inner bearing of mind. That is, he's graceful. He is full of grace. Here again is a paradox, that of faith and works. We work for the thing that is not earned. Our faith inspires our work, and our work inspires our faith. And the virtue that is ever going between them is humility. So I've talked a great deal about balance. What about this in simplicity part? As we are on the ladder, climbing down to climb up to heaven, how do we balance the reality of our earthly existence with our ultimate desire to go home? How do we balance the material with the ethereal? Benedictines are not Franciscans. They do not sell everything, but develop a way of interacting with the material world where, as de Waal puts it, there is to be enough, but no more. But how do we become satisfied with enough without triggering a sense of panic? What if it runs out? I have to have many more besides, just in case. Or a sense of deprivation. Just enough can really feel like so little. Here's the Benedictine answer. We are to see the material things in our life as sacred and on loan. I'll repeat that. All things, all our possessions, house, car, money, time, and I would go so far as to say our children and our very bodies, they are sacred and they are on loan. This sacred nature of things, plus the fact that they are on loan, equals good stewardship. Stewardship cultivates a sense of detachment, enough to take joy in all these good things as being gifts from God. Let's break down each part to better understand the whole. The sacred nature of things, specifically our work. In the Benedictine way, we are to orient our approach to work, even the most mundane and tedious of tasks, as something that is sanctified, a thing of beauty. Each task is an opportunity to give thanks unto the Lord for his great provision. Let us take an example. Cleaning toilets. On the one hand, I'll grant you, cleaning toilets is boring and kind of gross. But to look at it another way, the toilet is amazing. The next time you're on your hands and knees cleaning a toilet, do it out of reverence for this great gift of human ingenuity and convenience, and the fact that you're not spending a good portion of your day emptying chamber pots out the window into the street or going out to an outhouse in the middle of an Illinois winter. God bless the toilet. Amen. If we can elevate toilet cleaning to the level of the sacred, what can't we elevate? And if we are now spending our day engaged in sacred work, perhaps we would not need to feel the need to escape from it quite so much. We would find stability in the constant movement of our minds, our hands, and hearts, turning towards a task that is itself an outward sign of God's goodness towards us. To return to balance, this is not to say that we are to be working all the time. As incredible as toilets are, I know I am not called to scrub them day and night, though I may continue to remember them in my prayers. The Benedictine way calls for times of rest, for prayer, for study, but rest should be rest, something that fills us up, that reestablishes a sense of refreshment of body, mind, and spirit. Perhaps we might even start to differentiate between rest and leisure, but that is a worthy subject for a separate class. For now, it is worth emphasizing that if our ways of resting do not reinvigorate our body, mind, and spirit, it's time to prayerfully consider the ways we rest, and in conversation with a spiritual director, seek to incorporate intentional rest into our individual rules of life. DeWall emphasizes that in the Benedictine way, there is no overwork. Work itself can become an idol, nor is there idleness, for indeed the self can become an idol. It is necessary to care for ourselves out of a sense of stewardship. We are not our own, but the Lord's. But if I may, self-care can very easily slip into a strange form of self-loathing, where we assume right off the bat that we can handle very little. We never get the chance to elevate our work because we are too anxious about picking it up in the first place. To better understand that idea of all things being on loan, I frequently turn to the example of Jesus and the fig tree. In this example, I'm taking from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 11. On the following day, when they came from Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree and leaf, he went to see whether, perhaps, he would find anything on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. He said to it, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard it. Later, in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree withered away to its roots. Then Peter, remembering, and said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered." Jesus answered them, "Have faith in God." We are to leave a little on the tree at all times, not just in a season. Money, time, food. Each Sunday, when the gifts are brought forward, we say, all things come of thee, O Lord, and of thine own have we given thee. 1 Chronicles. These things are not ours. And if we use up everything God has granted for our own use, what do we have for Jesus when he comes knocking? So we are to cultivate a disposition towards our things where we have just enough, and even then, we are still called to give of that freely. It's ours, but that means it's ours to give. Have faith in God. The one who fed the 5,000 with just 5 loaves and 2 fishes, with leftovers, do we really not believe he will provide for us as well? Now, this doesn't mean we are to cultivate a spirit of recklessness. To return to the Sisters of St. Mary, Mother Miriam went and got an MBA to ensure she knew how to be a good steward of her convent's resources. But if we are ordering our lives with the idea that each thing that we have is a gift, perhaps we no longer feel we need to purchase so many additional gifts for ourselves. Every fork, every sock, every Lego piece that I step on because it's been left on the floor. What a gift! We live like kings and queens of old. What more could we possibly want in addition? Why not offer up more of what is not really ours to begin with in Christian hospitality and charity for our neighbor? So what can we say in conclusion to all this? There is balance in paradox. By bringing ourselves low and entering into the humility of prayer, we are raised up, and we are raised to a place of stillness, where we may rest in the constant movement of love in and between the persons of the Trinity. And we maintain that balance in prayer as we go about our work and study. Outer movement of good, sacred work, which keeps us balanced and attains for us our own inner peace that passes all human understanding. And we are known by that in the way we bear ourselves in the world. We should be able to spot a Christian from a mile away by the way he holds his body in peace. So even on earth, we are resting in heaven. There's much we can learn from the Benedictine way of life and its emphasis on balance, which, while it is in no way easy, is actually breathtaking in its simplicity. The Rule of St. Benedict is basically the size of a pamphlet. De Waal's book and her interpretation for the laity is not much longer, and I commend them both to you. I will also add that while most of us are not called to the monastic vocation, there are some who are. And if you know of a woman who is looking to discern a call to the monastic life, please either have her reach out to me, and I'll connect her to Mother Miriam, or she can feel free to contact Mother Miriam directly. And that contact information is on your handout. I will now open up the floor for questions or discussion amongst all of us who are gathered here. Yeah. I did what I do best, which is I banged into a lot of walls first. It's a circuitous story. When I was 20, which is actually that picture there, that's me when I was 20. I struggled with that balance between living in the world, but having this desire to draw nearer in my faith, but not knowing how to do it. And I actually I spent a week in the NYU psych ward over Holy Week of all times, which felt very significant after the fact. Because I had just kind of run into a rut, and I didn't know how to articulate this need, this to be with my Lord. And the earthly interpretation of that was, she's suicidal. But I wasn't. I just didn't know what life was for. All I wanted to do was be with my Lord. But there's a distinction there. And I didn't have a priest or a spiritual director that could draw that out. So I went to an earthly institution where there were many people there that were being helped and served by the wonderful staff. And it was an honor and a privilege to get to know them. It just turned out, it wasn't what I needed, but I didn't know where else to go. I also wanted to fast on Good Friday. And the doctor said, we can't let you do that. We've got anorexic people here. So again, that subtle distinction between fasting and an eating disorder, there wasn't anyone there that could parse that with me. I also have this memory in the day room where we all gathered. I remember on Holy Saturday playing Parcheesi and watching with some other people Charlton Heston's 10 Commandments. And then there was also a phone in the day room, and it listed all the other people that were there. And one of the person's name was Jesus. And I thought, well, Jesus is here. But coming out of that, it was at least a sign that what I was doing was not working. And I needed to find a place that could help me understand how to climb the ladder without even having the image of the ladder yet. I was just so stumbling around in the dark. And I eventually found a church, a high Episcopal church with good priests. Nothing wrong with my upbringing. It's just they didn't know what to do with me. They're like, take it seriously, but not that seriously. And I was like, how do you figure that out? Like seriously, but not too seriously. I'm like, I'm all in. So I found a place where there were people that were all in, at least the way I was. And I started going through the discernment process. And the rector of that parish, the first thing he gave for me to read after talking with me was, he said, go and get St. Teresa of Avila's autobiography. And I read it, and I'm like, this chick gets it. I found a friend. I found a sister. When she was younger, she and her brother, they snuck out. We're like, we're going to go be martyrs for God. We're going to go like get ourselves killed for the Lord. I'm like, yes! Yes, she gets it. And it was immature. She was young. So was I, right? But like having someone that I felt I had that soul connection with, and a priest that knew to give me that. Before that, people were giving me books. I swear to you, Eat, Pray, Love. Like, that's sort of where the milieu in which I was. God bless them. They were trying to help. That was not helpful. So in that discernment process, I had questions that I just wasn't getting an answer that was satisfying. And in my arrogance, not humility, arrogance, the rector told me that I should be in touch with a woman priest. And he said her name, and I'm like, sounds good. Got home, can't remember what he said. And instead of admitting that I couldn't remember her name, I was like, I'm gonna look her up I know she's preached like at the church. I'm gonna look her up on the website. And I came up with Mother Miriam, and that name rang a bell. I'm like, that must have been who he said. And so I contacted the priest and said, you told me that you would put me in touch with Mother Miriam. And in his arrogance, he didn't say, no, I did it, or what are you talking about? He said, oh, must have said it. So he put me in touch with Mother Miriam. And Mother Miriam said to me, well, I don't agree with women's ordination, but I'd be very happy to talk to her. And I said, yes, this is who I want to talk to. I want someone who's going to go back and forth with me on this, because I've got questions, and I don't want to just be patted on the head and told, you don't need to worry about that. But I do. I want someone to take my questions seriously. And so I went up and I talked with her, and I continued to discern with her. And from there, I found that my calling was just, I didn't see another path forward of becoming deeper in my faith than becoming a priest. And then through talking with her, I realized, oh no. In some ways, that can be limiting if you're not really called to that life. And I was shown a path forward. I was so grateful. Yeah, so that's the long, circuitous answer.
Thank you so much. You mentioned briefly about the difference, the distinction between rest and leisure. I would love to hear more about that and learn from that.
So, and this won't be everyone's definition. So, grain of salt. There's something that I have found very valuable in just sitting. Quiet. No movement. Allowing all of this to kind of settle, right? You can think of snow getting blown up in the air and then having it just sort of come back down until you have this just beautiful, clean, settled landscape within yourself. And that takes time and focus, right? You have to kind of bring everything to bear in a way to rest, paradox. So that's how I see rest. Silence. Noticing, right? Because we rarely are in complete silence. We've got it's like John Cage's, 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The music is in the noticing all the sounds that can only exist in that time, in that place. The performance will be very different the next time it's performed. Noticing. So that's what I see as rest. And it's very important. And it's in having that can actually allow you potentially to even sleep better at night. Because you're not going to bed and be like, okay, sleep, right? Our bodies don't work that way. Our minds don't work that way. Our souls don't work that way. So rest. Leisure. It's joy in a worthy activity for its own sake. You may be producing something, but that's in the end not the point. I'm thinking of Jim's beautiful painting, that he brought in. If you were here for that, there was so much going on in that painting. You could see, the focus, where Jim went. I could just see, a little bit of the breadcrumbs to create that. And that scene for me of Mary Magdalene meeting the Lord. And speaking of a balance between earthly and heavenly, did you notice she kind of was a part of the earth around her? The way in which she was painted with the swirls, she was there, but she was also very much in the earthly realm, in all of that beauty and riot of color. And Jesus, in his written body, was so much more solid, which I loved, right? The act of creating that, what a joy for us to be able to meditate on that. And what a joy for Jim to enter into that creation process. The Creator has made us to be creators. We are to imitate the Creator. So in leisure, we're creating, and it's in that act, whatever it may be, we are drawing nearer to our Lord. So it's different than rest, even though it's a refreshment of the spirit. So there is a difference there, and they're both, I believe, necessary to putting the pieces back together, or at least keeping the pieces together each day so they don't continue to fracture.
Thank you so much for this. I'm curious to learn a little bit more on kind of the practical sides of being an oblate or an associate of St. Mary's. What kind of commitments have you taken on as part of that, other than what you had shared as part of the entry point into oblate life?
So each rule of life will look different. So there's general expectations of some relationship with the daily office that can be coordinated through conversation with your spiritual director. I've had times where I've done more, I've had times where I have done less, but it's never disappeared. For me, it's not necessary, but to have a sacramental confession. I put that on there because I won't do it otherwise. It's always easy to go, don't have time. a commitment to a retreat, which has, again, shifted, but to set aside portions of your time, day to day, as well as season to season, where these mark you, and you've put it down in writing, and that's what you're committing yourself to do, to continue to enter that training. Commitment to taking the Eucharist every Sunday. Our spiritual food, again, elevates us. It's something that I don't notice as much anymore, so I'm trying to think through, I think I remember having conversations around consumption, what we take into our bodies and minds, and treating those equally, right? So what do I consume? It changed what I watch, what I subject my inner life to from the outer world. And being in contact with Mother Miriam, it turns out that it now means having her come here, so that there's that ongoing relationship. So sometimes you just don't know where it's going to lead. And then monetarily contributing to the sisters in their life, as well as praying for them, because they're praying for us. Is that helpful?
Related question. Obviously, you didn't become a nun. Was James in the picture at this point? So, because you chose oblatehood,
Mm-hmm.
how did you think about going down that path? And then, what happened?
Yeah. So I was already married when I became an associate. But I had known James for such a long time. Actually, when I was in the hospital, he and my roommate came to visit me. My roommate, who is Jewish, so she brought me matzah, and he brought me jelly beans. And their plastic bag was confiscated at the door. So in a strange way, he's always been in the picture, kind of from this very long journey. And I'm grateful for that, because my calling became very clear. And it is very possible that if I had met Mother Miriam earlier, I would have started on a journey towards becoming a professed nun, which isn't my calling. So God continues to put things in our path as we need them in order to kind of keep us going in the direction, even if we're not aware of it until retrospect.
Thank you again for sharing. But I see you as such a passionate artist. And because of that, it seemed like your spiritual mentor, your spiritual guide, needed to be amped up to the same level. Because a lot of the other people through your church at that time didn't seem to connect. And what about Mother Miriam resonated with you? That emphasized that, okay, I need that stillness too.
She was the real deal. She was living a life completely devoted to Jesus Christ, not dithering around on the edges. And I respected her. And I respected very few people. To offer guidance that I thought, yeah, this is coming from like a genuine, discerning source. And I like that she knew what was what. And if she thought I was wrong, she would tell me. Again, so I really respect that. And that just kind of goes with any authority figure in my life. Our child's pediatrician is, I think, over 60. She's seen it all, and she doesn't take any crap. I like that. And for me, when Mother Miriam has become a friend, but I wasn't looking for a friend. I wasn't looking for someone to tell me what I was doing was working and that, I can just sort of relax and let things go. I knew that wasn't right. I knew that there was more to what we were called for. And I needed to find someone that knew that too. We might have time for one more short question, or we can, I think we're at 10:49. Well, God bless you on the rest of your Lenten journey together. Here we go. At a clock. Really big. That helped. All right.
Thank you. You are too kind to me.
I mean,